What's up, Caleb?
What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. Good, good.
Good.
I am currently in my car.
What's
I
that?
was gonna said I'm currently in my car right now. I was gonna actually record at home, but I think Cappy's sleeping.
Yeah.
Like the kitchen table's like not open. So then I was like, I'll come up to Restoring Hope, and Dan and Andrew are recording for
Oh
Dan's
yeah.
new album. So I am in my car. Yeah,
Right on. That works.
it's killer.
Yeah.
I'm
You
here.
have to
I'm here for a good time.
maybe excuse both of us. We have coughs going on.
Oh,
Give me
that's
a second.
tight.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
it just started hitting me this evening.
Cough to
Yeah.
you.
All right, Cal. Have you met Caleb in any capacity before?
No, I've not.
All right. This is our buddy Caleb.
This is me.
Yeah. So we'll just hop into things.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cal, do you want to start open us up in a word of prayer, and we'll
Yeah,
hop on in?
yeah, dude. Yeah, Heavenly Gracious Father, Lord, we come before you in the matchless name of Jesus. And Lord, we thank you for another tremendous opportunity you placed before us to learn of you, to grow with you, and to grow in you. And Father, thank you for Caleb's heart and his desire to want to just share his life and his experiences with us and the things that you're leading him into and the things that you're teaching him. And Father, I ask that this conversation would be just so glorifying and edifying to you for us as well, and that will bless our listeners. You're amazing in everything that you do, and Lord, we're just grateful for another opportunity to be with you. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome in Jesus' name. We ask and we pray and we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Mm.
All right, Cal. Tell me a little bit about your day, mostly for audio purposes, and because we love you.
Okay, tight. So I worked at Ipsy today at the shop with the bros. Me and Troy Boy worked all day today. It's a pretty chill day. It wasn't super busy. We actually made a decent amount of money. A lot of consoles. We sold like a bunch of Xboxes and PS4s. So like that was really cool. And after I left work, I talked to my mom for a bit, which was really cool. We talked about kind of briefly like the relationship stuff I was telling you about yesterday.
Yeah.
And like I just have like a lot more rest and clarity in my heart. Like talking to her really did help me a lot and helped me put a lot of things in perspective. So I was like very grateful that she even like hunted me down. Like we need to talk. Like call me when you get off work. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll try to be a man and do this thing on my own. And she was like, you better call me. I'm like, all right, because she's a mom and she cares and she's tremendous, dude. So I was gonna like just go home and take a nap, but after talking to her, I just felt very lively. So I went to the gym and I just lifted. So then I went home and I ate rice and broccoli, and
Right
now
on.
I'm hanging with the fellas. So this has kind of been my day. It's not super eventful, but eh.
Good deal, man. Legit. Yeah. I think we're set on the audio,
Cool.
so we'll hop on in. And Caleb, we just keep it conversational. So just
Sweet.
we'll do your thing.
Too legit.
Before we start, did anyone message you any questions?
Only Kelly asking, what took so long to, but
Fair.
yeah. So not yet, but
Okay.
um, this is the Let God Die podcast. This is Josh.
And this is Calvin.
And our guest today is Caleb Schirmer. Just to give you a little insight into who Caleb is and how we cross paths. Caleb has become a really good friend of me and Kendra's and Evelyn's.
Hey.
I mean, I guess Evelyn sees him as a friend, one of the many friends of our daughter. But yeah, so Caleb came to a discussion night at her house. We call it like let God Die discussion nights that we were doing for a while, kind of going over concepts of like changing understanding of what it means to follow God. And yeah, pretty much right when we met, it was like gonna be bros, and now we meet up every week just to talk about life, and pray together, and yeah, it's been really solid. So I'll give you a little heads up. Caleb is king of dad jokes. They just kind of, they're very much in his heart. So I'm expecting some of those to rise up. One thing that me and Calvin had talked about doing is doing some Q&A here. So we had actually asked for people to submit questions if they wanted us to answer any. We only received one so far, but our friend Kelly, who has been a supporter of this podcast and a really solid friend, just asked what took us so long to get back to doing the podcast. So Calvin, what's your answer to that?
Oh man,
What took you so long, man?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like life just got really busy. Well, for one, I'm not able or equipped or have the tech savvy to run a podcast on my own.
Not with that attitude.
And yeah, of course. And also, I wouldn't want to do it without Josh. So like, Josh was busy. I was kind of busy, working like crazy, holiday seasons, Thanksgiving, Tuesday nights at Restoring Hope. Like a lot of my time was just like all over the place. But like we didn't go on a hiatus out of like any weird spot. Like I just think both of us, like our time schedules got to the point where we just couldn't meet up to actually talk to people. Because like I was working a job where I had to work early mornings, and then you were like, with child and things.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Preparation and back and forth in and out of town. And so yeah, like I don't know. I don't really have an excuse as to why it took so long, but those are my reasons. I don't know if they're valid, but I've definitely missed actually getting to talk to people and learn testimonies, and like these are things I actually super look forward to. So just as much as we weren't doing a podcast, like I've missed actually just talking and hanging, because like your state's away, dude. So like, we don't ever get to talk, but then we have other people around us too to talk to, new friends to get to know. So yeah,
for sure. And to piggyback on that, I think really it's what took us so long is, I didn't get back to doing this because, I had a kid, and she's almost 8 months old, and my wife is throwing her hands up in disgust because I did not bear that child. I was just in the room and made jokes, and there were times that me and my sister-in-law in the room, the delivery room, Kendra had to get on us about like, all right, like I know you guys want to have fun and joke around, but laughing hurts. So we had to tone it down a little bit. But yeah, it was good. That was just about 8 months ago, and just kind of setting into this mode of wanting to pick back up with things that I'm passionate about, and get back in the swing of things. So the podcast had been delayed for a while, but we're back in the swing of things. So thank you for anyone who listened on that hiatus. I think we had about 1,000 listeners, 1,000 listens over the course of the time that we weren't putting anything new out. So that means the world. I was kind of expecting to hop on there and just like see a tiny bit, but yeah, considering like no new content and having that many listens was it really means a lot. So
yeah,
thank you guys for listening. And if you want to submit any questions to us, it could be about the podcast, it could be about me and Calvin, could be just random things that you want us to talk about. Not that we have anything interesting to say necessarily, but even if you want to just ask some questions trolling, that's fine.
oh gosh,
Oh yeah, I open up that world. um, and especially if you want to like submit a question, you recording yourself, the audio, we could play that in the episode, um, rather than just reading off a question. So anyway, um, if you're interested in doing that, just email me at info@letgoddie.com, and we can go from there. So yeah, so Caleb, we'll get to you now because you're the man of the hour of the evening.
Mm.
In the hot seat.
Yeah, so I'm excited because like I know a lot about your story and about your heart and just like the things that God's done in your life, but I know that Calvin hasn't met you, so um, yeah, we just
I
want to
don't
like.
really get out much.
I don't either, so it's okay. We're in the same boat.
Cool, man.
But yeah, so I'm excited just to like, yeah, have you share your heart and your story, and I don't know, just trusting that it'll connect with whoever it needs to. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about who you are uh, currently.
Okay.
If you were to sum up what life looks like and kind of some things that are on your heart now, and then we'll get to some of the background of you
Okay.
as a person.
Okay. Yeah. That's a loaded question that I'll do my best to be chill about. So yeah, I currently right now in my role, I'm my official title. I'm the assistant director of annual giving at a local university, like Copeland College, and I work with students to make phone calls, for alumni and things like that. And so it's been really neat to be able to work with students on a different level. I had worked with Crew, which is a Christian organization on campus, and I'd worked that for 2 years. So it's been a really neat experience. And I think, going through this is not the path that I would have expected to go. And so it's been a real challenge and a real struggle trying to live life um, the way God's wanting me to live while still doing a different quote unquote job. Um, and so, how that looks, I think if you were to ask me tomorrow, I would come up with a different answer.
Yeah, maybe sum it up in a
For
different
sure.
way.
Yeah, so no, I think the Lord just still wants me to have a heart for others, and however capacity I could do that, I'm more than willing to serve God in that way. Currently working on a blog called "I Am Not King," and what that's about is letting God be like the king of my life, and like what that really looks like for me to be His servant, and what it looks like for me to be um, to follow Him and allow me to be His for Him to be my king. And so through that, the Lord just taught me a lot about humility. I think just learning how to trust Him when I really don't know what's going on in my life. It's so going through suffering and just being able to walk through the Lord with that. And like God's been redefining what with really means and how with is such a powerful word. And I think we use it too lightly in our day to day lives. And so God's been showing me like what with means. And so yeah, whether that's with him and I, whether that's with me and another friend or a student I'm ministering to, whether it's with the community, so whatever that looks like. So those are some things that I feel like God's been teaching me, and just kind of where I'm at in my life. So yeah.
Dude,
So
that's awesome. Like, oh, go ahead, Josh.
no, go ahead, Cal.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of talked about that. Like, a similar thing that the Lord was teaching me. Like, I'm not the hero of my story,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a really like humbling concept at first because we're kind of like preconditioned. Well, we know that for one, God will tend to make much of those who make much of Him, and like a lot of people have stepped into things out of that place knowing that that's the truth of who He is, because like the glory of God is naturally just an attractive thing. But there are some times where you following Jesus doesn't necessarily look like you being glorified,
Mm.
and understanding the fact that like at the end of the day, we're called to be content whether we're glorified or not. But at the end of the day, our peace should be found in the fact that Jesus is being lifted up in us and through us, and that's what's being seen. Maybe if it doesn't necessarily result in our successes being pedestaled or like our thoughts being like, you know, widely accepted or even things like that, or our positions being elevated. Like it's basically his namesake and like his heart and his love for his people. And like that was something real he spoke to me, like how when you're not the hero of your story and you walking with me will be so much easier the day you receive that. So like I've been learning ever since then, like trying to make sure that um as I'm tracking with him that like I'm like walking where I'm like I'm careful about my decision making and things like that for that reason. Because I don't want to do things out of selfish ambition, but I do want to do things out of obedience.
Mm.
I guess that makes any sense. I think I lost you guys.
Oh, sorry, I was giving Kendra a thumbs up to a note that she slid me. Can you
Oh,
hear us fine, Cal?
I think I can hear you guys now. I just lost video,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
but either way, I can hear you guys. It's good. But yeah, like Caleb, that's awesome, dude. Like that's so foundational.
Mm.
Yeah, and, I mean, yeah, one of the things that stands out to me about you, Caleb, is just like I think it relating to what Calvin said,
Mm.
is just like recognizing, I don't know, just that like God meets us in our like weakness and like
Mm.
in our times of um I don't know, just really needing to rely on him, you know. And
Yeah.
that, I mean like that daily,
Yeah.
like we should be growing in our
On the
reliance of him.
Deo. Yeah.
Um but yeah, Calvin,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there are a few people in my life in particular that like stand out to me as people that like are very willing to, as I guess, kind of see, along the lines of what you said, just like see God as the hero of their story, um, and not be about their own glorification. And I don't know. Hopefully, you take this the right way, but I mean, I see that in you, Caleb. Like,
Mm.
there just being times that you're willing to be like, "Hey, I'm having a tough day," you know, and I need to be around people. Like that's happened, and that always encourages and challenges the heck out of me
Mm.
because my thought is like, man, when I'm having those tough days, I'm usually like, well, just need to get through it. You know, I'm usually not the one to reach out. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
Mm.
that's like a thing that you've kind of always uh, been natural with or whatnot. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've always kind of reached out, not really most of my life reaching out to people, but I think more in the last, I don't know, 4 years maybe
mhm,
ish. But I don't know. I'm the type of person that like it's hard doing it, and I don't like it, but I don't really like admitting that I need help.
mhm,
It's like one of the biggest fears that I have, but I find myself doing it more than I like. So it's been a challenge for sure.
mhm,
So it's just been like I think God's
Mm.
been molding my heart in terms of being able to feel really vulnerable. Cause I've, grew up when it's a kind of a mindset and like performance and a mindset of um, really looking good in terms of how I'm doing with the person that, was doing really well and that people would like go to for advice and things like that. And then being able to realize that like life's not about that.
mhm.
So yeah, I would say those are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, I think it came up a ton in the podcast like last year in particular for whatever reason. Um, I think it was just it seemed like it was something that God was putting on like my heart. I think Calvin's to some extent too, and like some of our
Yeah,
guests
definitely.
just like the need to be on the receiving end of like of community, um, and it feels so much better to be on the giving end and to
Yeah.
like be able to like be a blessing. Um, but at the same time, I know for me, like it's far tougher, and it's more like a pride thing that I
Yeah.
sometimes don't want to be on the receiving end because it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know, like I want to be the one that helps, rather than the one who needs help.
Yeah, like that's it's such a fight and such a struggle because like it really takes faith, humble yourself to receive, and even like in in my case, like I've often like Caleb do like the same way. Like I have a hard time with it, but that's often when my heart's not focused or when I'm not like focusing on Jesus. When I'm like in a place where I'm kind of stressed out or doing my own thing, like it's the last thing I want to do. But like when I'm in a place where like I'm trusting and I'm wanting to trust, even if it's scary, like those conversations I've ever had with people is the ones where I've like decided that I'm gonna be strong enough to admit that I'm weak and I need encouragement and I need support, of those like friends around me who truly care. Um, yeah, and it takes the weirdness off of feeling as if you have to be the standard of of I guess like Christianity and appearing okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the strength doesn't come from me, like it comes from Jesus. And the day that I realize that, scary place. So whether you're receiving the encouragement or whether you're giving it, just understanding that like we're not the source of those things, but like Jesus is, and we all need Him in one way or the other in any given season in our life.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. So Caleb, let's back up a little bit, and I don't know if you want to just kind of share your story of
Mm,
I guess you and Jesus,
okay.
um, and maybe not just like when did you make that decision,
Okay.
but just kind of walk us through your journey um, with you and God.
Okay. Yeah. And it's funny because coming before this, just knowing that that would be a type of question.
Yeah, yeah.
As Schirmer, I mean, I've shared it multiple times, but it doesn't get any easier. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say um, my walk with Jesus has not been like the same. Like, I think I've seen Jesus differently
Yeah.
in a different way, kind of as I look at all my life. Which I think that makes Jesus kind of cool, kind of who he is. And so, I think one thing, growing up in a Christian home, there's kind of like, that was kind of that was it. That's all I ever knew. Raised in a bigger family, and so I was the middle child, which I think, and then just being, my mom said, very very sensitive, kind of growing up, and
Mm,
very. Um, my dad said I was like a very hard crier, and so just different things, being able to understand who I was as a even as a even as like an infant, and so um, and that just kind of grew and grew into just a heart for more for people,
mm,
and being like over sensitive towards other people, and just having a heart for others. And I think um, through that, struggled with a lot of identity struggles. Just struggled with a lot of different things, not knowing who I was, my identity. I didn't have the best household um, in terms of, I don't know, it's just struggles. You know, just dealing with some physical things from my dad, and getting the blunt of his anger, physically. Being surrounded by a lot of fights a lot growing up. That's kind
mm,
of what I remember half my life being. And so, um, me being that really shy, kind of introverted, very like internally processing, I internally processed like every single thing, and I
mm,
took everything to heart. And so I think God's been just kind of molding my heart kind of from those things. And so, um, yeah, just having a lot of identity just issues in terms of When I was 13 or 14, I really didn't know my sexual identity, and I was very confused and very concerned, and um, thought I was going to hell because I was not liking the people who I was supposed to like. I had feelings for things and feelings for other males, and it was just kind of more the identity issue that I was just dealing with a lot of like physical hurt and trying to absorb that. Um, just when I think I was 16, I had a sexual encounter with a guy in a youth group, and so it was a very confusing time, but it felt like comforting all at the same time. And then from that encounter stemmed sexual pornography, male pornography, and so just being able to deal with that and not being able to tell anybody was difficult. And so um, again, I was an extreme internal processor, and I put a lot of value in performing, doing really well. I was a very smart and bright kid. I was homeschooled, and so um, I had always had a love of learning, had a love to grow, had a love for um, knowing things that I didn't know, and so yeah, just some of those things God just kind of has been redeeming in my life. And so, kind of fast forward to college, kind of kept a lot of those really scary moments in my life, kept a lot of those remembrance of, abuse, remembrance of different things, and just really feeling very shameful and holding a lot of guilt. It's so, and some of those things still find themselves in my life, and I have to keep turning them over to Jesus. And so, in college, really struggling with mental disorder. I kind of struggled with depression for since like middle school, high school, just in different forms. And then, in high school, suicide attempts, and really wanted to end my own life because I didn't really like who I was, or I didn't want to be who I was anymore. And I think I didn't understand like what God was doing, man, in my life. And so, yeah, and just kind of God revealed Himself to me in a really unique way.
Now,
Just
was that like an individual like situation or experience, or just kind of over the course of time?
no, there was a very direct experience. I had just gone off um, like a month hiatus of not struggling with suicide attempts or suicide thoughts and depression, and I went to this conference with crew. I was very involved in crew in college, and developed a lot. Pretty much all of my friends were pursue that. And so I through that, you know, at the end of it, it's like an altar call, and you kind of go and you kind of make a commitment to go on a summer missions, go on a mission trip, which is what the crew calls them, or join staff or whatever your position in your life, or maybe just to recommit your life to Christ, maybe to make the decision to follow Christ. And I just was like feeling incredibly heavy, an incredible like heavy, very guilt ridden presence, and I was just kind of praying to God, and I was like, God, like I don't know why I'm so distressed, like I don't know why I want to do this, but I know something's stopping me, and I don't know what it is. And I remember going to the bathroom, and I was like in tears, and the Lord just kind of was like, Caleb, I want you to follow me, and like I forgive you, and I want you to follow me for the rest of the days of my life. And just knowing how much I had hurt Jesus, and how much I thought I had, really disrespected him and didn't love him well. But the Lord just kind of reaffirmed kind of his love, and just reaffirmed who I was. And I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to follow you to the rest of the days of my life, as long as I shall live. And I put the altar call, and from that moment on, like all my priorities changed. I no longer desired my major. I no longer desired anything anymore. I just wanted to serve. I wanted to do really cool things. I wanted faith was like real for the first time in my life, and I kind of did, okay, God, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do, and whatever that looks like. If I don't really understand what it is, I'm going to do it anyway because that's what you're calling me to do. Um, and so, yeah, it's been a journey since then. I think I was a completely different person, completely different. There's really no way to really describe it unless we go backtrack, but that's not humanly
Yeah.
possible. So, yeah, and I think God just been showing a different face in my life. I think so.
Sick, man. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what has been like that journey? I know you mentioned like dealing with like guilt and shame over things.
Mm-hmm.
Was that like an immediate thing, like in that moment that faded away, or would you say that there was like a huge shift in your understanding of the way that like God looked at you and your identity? Like what was that journey?
I think a lot of it was, I guess, like, I don't know how to put this, but like who God was so different to me. Like he would no longer this man that was in the sky who didn't like what I did, but he was somebody who wanted to have a relationship with me, and somebody who had like shown me what grace really meant and what it actually looks like to have faith in Christ, and that's literally following Him. And so, different things in my life had brought kind of shame and guilt, and not realizing I'm still holding on just to some things, and a lot of the symptoms I think have faded, and some have come, and some have gone, and yeah, just really finding my identity in Christ, and it's been a journey every day. And recently, I think this brings a lot to it. No, for I would say for 4 years, I didn't have any sort of suicidal thoughts, any sort of depression, any sort of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just this pivotal moment happened in my life where I wanted to do crew ministry full time. I'd done 2 years of it as an intern, and I said, God, like this is the only thing in my life that I want to do. If I didn't go to winter conference that year, if I didn't go on a mission trip with crew that year, if I didn't get rejected from another, just a lot of things were like lining up. I said, God, look at all these things that have lined up, and look at where I am today because of you. And because of that, I want to do crew full time. Like it just makes sense. Everything's very lined up. I'm a sequence kind of guy, so everything just kind of lined up. And God, the door was closed, and I was like, "You're not doing crew full time. Like that's not gonna happen." And so, it was a pretty solid slam, meaning they would definitely a no for sure. And I was like, God, I'm so confused. Why do you? And I think I've received a lot of hurt from that, and that happened to April last year. So it's still raw, and it's still showing it, reviewing itself. And I think a lot of old habits like pornography, depression, a lot of very strong, heavy mental struggles have like come back into my life out of nowhere. And I think a lot of it is being able to process hurt and be able to really process my life with Jesus. Um, and so, yeah, my walk's just been differently this past year, but um, I think I've grown closer more with God than I ever have in my life. So, yeah. I don't really know if I really answered your
Good.
question. I have a habit of doing that and just kind of talk, and
No,
maybe I
you're good,
answered your
man.
question.
Yeah, I mean, this is not an interview of like I don't know, needing to answer it verbatim or this is just conversation. So
Mm, thank you, friend.
what are you gonna
Yeah,
say, Ken?
man. Like that's. I feel like what you're like. You're onto like a very key thing. Like we're being transformed day by day. So like our like revelation of who God is meant to grow and is meant to increase as we continue to deepen the relationship. And like it's really cool, like you mentioned, how like he changed your desires when you were going through that season and all that stuff was going on in your head. Like when you were like walking after him, like he gave you clarity. And I think he does that for like every one of his kids. Like and then like see you track through that thought was like really awesome. Because like it doesn't matter if we do struggle, like if we're willing to struggle forward. I think that says a lot more about how much God loves us and how much we receive his love.
Mm.
Because like guilt and shame can be like such a trap sometimes, or you feel like debilitated, or like, or you don't feel worthy to follow Jesus, or you
Mm.
feel like you feel so condemned, like I'll never change. And everything in the gospel is speaking like to our encouragement. Like,
Mm.
no, like you are changing. I am tracking with you day by day. What I began, I will complete. Like Jesus is rooting for us, and we're rooting against ourselves. Like, but when we actually just, I guess, just start trusting how much he loves us and rest in that love, like we begin to see the transformation, and we're not the ones who actually do it. Like he actually does it in us. And that's like really, really freeing. Caleb, I'm proud of you, dude.
Mm. Thanks. It means a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but I feel like there have been times in my life that uh, I've seen some like glaringly obvious things that I need to shift or surrender over to God. Um, that I'm like, that it seems like that's like the one thing that's like heavy in my life. Um, and then getting to a point where I'm like, all right, like I feel like that's kind of out of my hands. Like God's taking care of it. Um, and then it seems like something else pops up, and I'm like, oh shoot, like I didn't
Mm.
even see that thing,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
beforehand. Um, but I don't know. Like as you were talking, I was just thinking like God's grace, man. Like
Mm.
in not like not showing you the big picture of like these are all the things like in your life that you need to surrender or like that. Um, I mean, even like having a period of a pretty long period of time of like not having certain struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, even that being God's grace of like, hey, like I'm doing a work in you, and like getting you to a
Mm-hmm.
point of rest and peace in
Yeah.
Him.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I think slowly maybe like allowing you to see some things that like, hey, there are some unresolved things or,
Yeah.
things that you're holding on to or whatever it might be. Um, but, I don't know if we were to see like all of that at once, that's way too overwhelming. But I think that's God's grace of just
It
like
is.
allowing us step by step. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think God was. I look at. I've always been like a teaching. Like I've always loved being taught things, and so God does a way with that with me that He doesn't do with anybody else because God talks to His children differently, and so
mhm.
um, I think for the past 3 years where I didn't have any of those issues, God was dealing in my life a lot of like, it's funny how to be like relational with people and how to even handle things like how to handle conflict. Because I think a lot of times while I was in college, I was focused on, my schools, my studies, focused on, growing and being more like Christ and learning how to read the Bible and things like that, how to pray better and just like, but after college, I think being relational and how to love others well and how to have community and what that looks like. And I feel like if God would teaching me those lessons and I've kind of realized this just now, has been like for these moments like in my life now, like community to me is so different than then, and what God's taught me about community then is helping me now with my current struggles, and so
Mhm.
just kind of how you
Full
know,
circle.
yeah, absolutely. I just thought that now, and so they would just well, when it's on your head, you might as well say it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of tons of times with me that it's like, man, if I were struggling, like, or if I was going through this thing 5 years ago, Like I wouldn't know what the heck to do with it, you know.
Mm.
Um, and there have been times that like I've gone through time periods where I'm like, all right, this is the worst thing that I've ever gone through, and I get past it, and I'm just like, I'm sure as heck glad that I'm past that, you know. And there's kind of this piece in the back of my mind that expects to never go through something that hard again.
Yeah.
But I think that often it is God just kind of preparing us, you know, or it's just like, hey, like life. I mean, there's a lot of loss in life, you know, just naturally. Like
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, even just thinking about um, like the more people that you know, like the more death you'll experience, you know,
Mm.
like the more grief you'll experience and loss of like friendships and like all kinds of things. Um, yeah, and I have a tendency at times to want to like uh, I want to like isolate myself for the sake of like not experiencing the depths of like sorrow with that type of
Yeah.
thing, you know. Um, but ultimately, just yeah, just the fact that like he's good. He walks through that stuff with us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know fully where I was going with that, but just yeah, just the I think he does just like prepare us in steps, in ways that it's cool to like yeah look back on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, go ahead, Caleb. I'm sorry,
Oh
bro.
no, I that's how I externally process. I just say yeah, mm-hmm, yeah. So letting you know that I'm listening. So if you got something, you have the show.
Okay. Um, I guess like Emma, how like we are saying, like if God showed us everything at once that we would ever need to change, like if you could imagine like the depths of brokenness that we have to be saved from, like that list would be so extensive. And upon being so extensive, like just mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausting to have to
Yeah,
micromanage that. Think it's his goodness that I think it's his goodness that he doesn't allow us to have to look at that list, but simply like he told the disciples in John chapter 3 when they asked him like, what must we do to be doing the works of the Father? He said, to do the works of the Father is this, to simply believe on him who he sent. Like
Mm.
Jesus takes that whole micromanaging list. He's like, don't worry about the list. If you keep your eyes on me, this list will correct itself because I'll
yeah,
do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And yeah, like that's honestly like where that rest comes in. And I'm so glad, like, because even me, like knowing myself and all of us to some extent, like to think of ourselves a little bit better than, we're not 100% honest about how much we suck and how much we can. But to know that, like, the Lord's not letting, he's more like, yo, I love you. I died as you, like, you're forgiven by me. Just keep your eyes on me, and I'm gonna correct everything as we track through this thing day by day. Like, and not only that, but I'm thoroughly sure you end up with me in the end. So, like, if you're tracking with me, like, don't worry about the list.
yeah,
Grateful,
yeah.
so grateful. Holy crap!
Good word
Yeah,
though,
like to
man.
track
I
in
mean,
with what you were saying.
what's that?
I'm sorry. Yeah, like, to track with like what Caleb was saying, like, dude, I struggle with pornography like most of my life. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I definitely thought, like Josh, like you said, like it was gonna be something that I would just be done with, and I would never have to revisit again. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
dude, like sometimes it just rears its ugly freaking head, like when my mind's not focused on Jesus, and when that moment happens, like just have to lay it down before him. If I try to carry it, like everyone around me know that things are off. Like I'll definitely know in my heart that things are off. But
mm,
if I just lay it down before him, 1 John 1:9, like if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us and to purge us of all unrighteousness. Like
Mm.
that's been a verse that's encouraged me in the moments where I've fallen on my face to just know that like our Father is a good one. And like he's always encouraging us and welcoming us and recoursing us as long as we're willing to have it. So if I'm acknowledging my faults before him, he's making me clean. And through my acknowledgement, I'm being transformed. And it's like honestly, it's such a good deal. It beats being in condemnation for weeks trying to read my Bible and fast to like atone for my sin and like not eat because I watched porn the day before or like I masturbated. But
Mm.
it's a way better deal and it's way more freeing, and it brings me to a place where I want to walk closer with Jesus instead of like being afraid to come near him, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, the whole, I think that's the tricky thing with just when it comes to like sin in general is like the natural, like the natural result is to get our eyes on self, you know.
Mm.
A buddy of mine years ago, it was just in a conversation, you know, but you know, sometimes the questions that people ask, I think are maybe sometimes more important than the answers or the conclusions that we get to or whatever. But um, I don't know, like no one had ever. I guess I'd never like heard this question asked, but he just said like, Josh, like, I don't know, how do you think like God views us like when we're in our sin?
Mm.
And for whatever reason, I'd never like considered that, you know. Um, I mean, looking back, I think that my gut thought was always like, oh, shame, uh, like disappointment or whatever. But for whatever reason, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was just like Holy Spirit in that moment. Um, I was just like, shoot, man, like I don't know. I think this is like just what God's kind of revealing to me, like in this moment. But um, Jesus when he was being crucified, like there are these dudes that like they knew he wasn't a guilty man, like worthy of death. Like I mean, there were a lot of people that believed that he was falsely claiming to be the son of God and to be God. So I guess in that regard, they did have maybe in their minds justifiable reasons to see him as someone that was worthy of death. But
Mm-hmm.
like as he's being crucified, when he cries out, "Father, forgive them," not just "Father, forgive them," but "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Um, yeah, that just like clicked with me in a fresh way, where I think my thought as a follower of Jesus is usually just like, dude, I know exactly what I'm doing. Like I know better when it comes to, yeah, I mean, like pulling in the example of like porn and lust, like that being a big one for me too. Is like I know better. Like I've experienced the grace and love of God, and there's no reason for me to be in this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but yeah, just like there was a point in time like after that conversation with him that I mean, like, yeah, just to be honest, like the next time that I had actually looked at porn, just like I looked myself in the mirror, and like for the first time, I was just like, huh, like let's not think about how I view myself right now in this moment, like, but like place my eyes on Jesus, and it was just like this. I don't know, it just like this huge change where it wasn't like seeing myself in guilt and shame, but more so like being like, yeah, man, like I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm robbing myself of experiencing like the fullness of following Jesus, of walking with Him, and if we really did grasp what we're, I guess what we're like missing out on, when we're in our sin, I think if we really grasp that, like we wouldn't have desire to compromise. So it kind
Mm-hmm.
of just changed things for me from that moment forward, where it was like no longer, oh, I've screwed up and I suck. It was more so like, man, I screwed up, and like that's like further indication that like I need to surrender this. Like further indication that like I don't always have my eyes on Christ.
Mm.
And not in a guilt and condemnation kind of way, but more in just like a reality check of like, shoot, like I thought I was strong enough,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I didn't need help. whether that's from community or just from uh, like relying on God, you know.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think like that when we are hard on ourselves about messing up, whatever it happens to be, um, yeah, that's just like a weight that we're not meant to carry.
Yeah.
And and it's not like you know, the ulterior isn't a compromising and justifying and like calling sin good.
Right.
But
Not that either.
yeah, but there's like a third way, you know, like there's you have the one extreme of like beating yourself up, you have the other extreme of it's no big deal, or you have the other way of all right, like letting our letting our weakness draw us to the heart of the Father,
Amen,
and
dude.
letting us like come to Him and you know just like bury. I guess just thinking of like the example of like burying your head in the chest of the Father, you know, and just like letting Him um, define you and give you your identity in those moments instead of us being defined by what we've done or what we've compromised on.
Yes. Yes. Like as you were speaking, um, I believe it's in First John, and it's First John. I believe it's chapter 3. It's in chapter 3. I'm totally open to being wrong, but I have my phone. I don't want to go into my Bible app while we're doing the podcast. But there is a verse in First John that says, um, "If our hearts condemn us, our heavenly Father is greater than our hearts, and if our hearts don't condemn us, then we can ask Him for anything in His name, and He'll do it. That He be glorified through His Son." And like when you mentioned that, like that first part of that passage grabs me every time. Like in moments where for us as believers and we're like pursuing Jesus, like we're not trying to sin and get away with it. And like we're honestly wanting more of Christ and we're walking after him. Like it's so easy to fall in that trap where we let our hearts condemn us and speak louder than the truth of what God's done for us. And like it almost as if to say like, yeah, the cross was cool, but it wasn't enough. Like I still feel like garbage or I still don't feel worthy. And like we stay in this place of distance with the Heavenly Father when really what we need, like you said, is more intimacy, which is where the transformation is. Like and for me, like it is definitely an intimacy issue. Like my intimacy is lacking when I'm in a place where like pornography comes up and my heart's not like where it needs to be. I'm that much more susceptible to fall or
Yeah,
just anger, even or frustration or like the tendency to just wall people off and just kind of do my own thing. Like those are all things that are byproducts of my lack of intimacy with Jesus. And when those times come, like and like they come hard, dude. And to know that Jesus loves you even yet and still, like you were saying too, that's the only thing that's gonna keep you walking forward and saying, Lord, if you say that I'm good, like if your blood is saying that I'm clean, then I believe it over my own feelings about myself. Like if you are truth, then I have to let you be true and let myself be a liar, you know, even in this case, and continue to walk and believe. But
yeah,
I love that passage so much. Like if our hearts condemn us, our heavenly Father is greater than our hearts.
yeah.
And yeah, dude, he's
And
he's so good, man.
you had it right there.
Hey, my man.
Wow.
First John chapter 3, verse 20.
Yeah, I figured you're not gonna hop on your phone and search for it, but I will.
My man.
Um, yeah, man. I think that early on, early on, I want to say up until several years ago, man. In my walk, like in my walk with Jesus, like my thought was like, you know, I heard all this talk about like God's grace and God's love, um, but yeah, there was this internal struggle of like, I don't want to like focus so much on His love and grace that I take advantage of it and see it as like cheap. Um, I think
Right.
there was like this, yeah, I don't know. I think just like kind of talking myself out of His grace being sufficient, because I was just like, but I know better, you know. Uh, and just like it was really when Jesus talked about like his yoke being easy, his burden is light. For the
Mm-hmm.
longest time, that just like didn't connect with me at all. And I think because I was just like, how the heck can that be possible? You know, like doing this walk is tough, you know, and it's like incredibly difficult. And it's weighty, you know, and it's I don't think I would have said this this way, but like looking back, I really was like acting as though and like living as though it was like a burden, and just like this weary living. But yeah, just a few years ago, like really embracing, you know, like there's the lady who like poured the perfume on Jesus' feet, washed his feet with her hair, and Jesus says, you know, like he who is like who is uh, who is forgiven much, you know, like loves much, um,
Yeah, dude.
and just that, like, yeah, like really experiencing that type of unconditional love from a perfect God, you know, doesn't give us permission to continue in living our way. You know, it doesn't give us permission to continue in our sin, but if anything, like calls us out of that
Yeah.
in a way that's like truly transformative. And I mean, I think about that like just even with a marriage relationship, you know, like the fact that Kendra, you know, I would say would like love me. I think to an extent, like no matter what I did, you know, even if I made some like major mess ups, like that doesn't that doesn't motivate me to be like, oh, I could get away with whatever, you know, like if anything,
Right.
like the natural thing is like, no, there's like a freedom there, like a freedom to be who I am, and a freedom to freedom to like react to that love in a way that reciprocates that love, and that doesn't want to like violate that love, you know. Yeah, hopefully that made
Yes.
sense.
No, totally. Caleb, did you have anything to add, bro? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Please do.
I mean,
No.
but we're here, so put them on the spot, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think about the woman at the well just specifically, and there's nothing that like pops out in front of me, but I think oftentimes I'm so willing to hear the truth first in a way because I know if I hear it, I know I'll be okay with what I did. Like I think growing up, just um, you know, I was being afraid of being in trouble, of being afraid of doing something wrong. Sometimes that's all you want to hear. Like you don't want to hear that what you did was okay, if that makes sense. Cause then you want to feel, you know, I think I've lived so much in that shame and guilt that like when I'm told wrong, I don't mind living there, cause that's where I find like comfort. But then when it's this
you're
grace
saying
stuff,
like in the shame and guilt,
yeah,
you
and I
feel
think
like yeah,
yeah,
like
and so
familiarity with it or
yeah, and
something.
then when it's the grace part, I'm like, oh, like oh my, like I feel more guilty than when I did, and it's just a weird concept that I don't think I grasped a lot
Mm-hmm.
until you know the last couple of years. And so the concept of grace has been so like it's been more and more uplifting and less. I don't think grace is about like necessarily like giving you feedback to say that it's wrong, but more like to lift you up, I think. And I think having those things reversed in my head and growing up, that this whole grace thing was like, what is that? Like, so it's okay that I did wrong. Like you still love me. Oh, okay, cool. All right. I guess I don't have to bash myself. Okay, I'll accept your grace. Like it's been a whole new concept for me, and it's been growing more and more in that light. So yeah, if that makes any sense, that's just kind of popped in my head. So when you guys were talking, when you asked me that question, so
I mean, there's like so much about God's grace that like is so unfamiliar to us.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
naturally, like it's
Mm-hmm.
God's grace, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But even just like considering the way that like our economy of relationship, you know, just like I don't know, and maybe we're not to the point of like disregarding people that hurt us or
Yeah.
like being like, all right, I'm done with you, but like even if we do have like a high threshold in our own strength of
Mm.
forgiveness, you know, like there's still yeah, I mean I would say that I generally have a forgiving heart towards people. But if someone like wrongs me in a way that I'm just like, you knew better and like you took advantage of me, like
Yeah.
I mean there have been people that
Mm-hmm.
I've been pissed at for years that I just like my in my head I justified it for the longest time because it was just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't really get mad at people, but like you know, but that person it was just like, yeah, they just hurt me very deeply and like
Yeah.
that was completely uncalled for, you know,
Mm.
where I've had like the passive approach of like not gonna talk about this with people. Um, I'm just gonna kind of keep it in, but
Yeah.
noticing over time like when that person comes into conversation, you know, like let's say we're talking and you
Mm.
just like mention the name of Calvin, not but you know uh,
For sake of
for the
illustration.
sake of illustration,
Ayo. Ayo.
where like there have been times that like I've just had like this stirring up in me where I'm just like feeling uncomfortable even at the mention of their name, and it's
Mm.
like I guess I haven't dealt with that, and I thought that it was no big deal to hold things against them, but
Yeah.
it's like eating at me.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's been a thing like the last several years that I've had to deal with a lot of that and resolve. Sometimes just within me, other times actually, you know, making things right with people or um, just letting things go, and not letting things go in a way that is, oh, it was no big deal, but more so like, yeah, they did hurt me, and I want to
Mm.
acknowledge that, but I'm not gonna like allow that to you know control me or um, not gonna allow that to keep me from loving them or from you
Yeah.
know not to withhold love from others. And what that looks like, you know, I mean, I don't want to say that in a dismissive way. I know that there are people that have done horrible, like you know, horrible things to people that it might not be wise to, you know, have them in your life. Um, I'm talking more so like things that involve like hurt feelings, um, uh, that type of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I think it just like yeah, just wanted to say that because I think when in talking about forgiveness, I don't know, just sometimes talking in vague terms or general terms. I know that there have been people that have been, you know, like utterly violated in ways that, um, you know, just to phrase it as like, oh, forgiveness, you know, um, sometimes there's a whole lot more healing and process that needs to happen than, yeah,
Yeah. It's not like a sweeping under the rug as if it never happened. Because
no,
like
not at all.
that's not reality and that's not forgiveness either. Nor is that actually addressing what actually really happened.
Yeah,
Um yeah, it took me a long time. Like one of the hardest things like I've ever had to forgive was my dad. And it took me a very, very long time to get to a place where I understood that I had pedestaled him in my heart in a place where Jesus was meant to be. And because I did that, I found it incredibly hard to forgive him because my standards for him were so high. Not knowing that just like me, he's just as broken as I was apart from knowing the Lord. And there's nothing he could have given me that he himself didn't receive, you know? So it made it that much more easier to kind of understand where he was in life when we were younger, when I was younger, to know now like he's a son just as I was. The only difference is that he doesn't know how much Jesus loves him and how much he's forgiven. But like the moment that the Lord leveled the playing field between the both of us, I was like, I finally get it now.
Mm.
Like, and I carried that dude for like 25 years.
Yeah.
I was prepared to die angry, justified, and pissed off at my father for walking out on me as a kid. And I I would have felt validated to stand before holy Jesus himself and say my dad was not worthy of forgiving. I know you died for me, but like no way. There's no way I was going to like I would not lower myself to do that. Like he owes me. And the hard part about the gospel is that it stripped me of my rights to be owed. And that was hard. That was
Mm.
really, really, really hard. But just as hard as that was, the revelation that Jesus gave me and the fact that me and him were just as much the same, I was like, man, it freed me up to actually begin to love my dad in a way I never did before and begin to see his value in the way that Jesus created him instead of how I chose to see him my whole life. And, I still pray every single day, like wherever he is, that like he knows that, I still love him and I still care about him. And one day, like if we could have that talk, like I'd love to. But for him to fully know that, dude, like everything's forgiven. You don't owe me anything. Like I'm here to love you. Like I'm not here for you to try to make up for 20 plus years of life. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And I even got to a place where I was so angry at him that even if he would have apologized to me, like it wouldn't have mattered. And I
Yeah.
think that was a place that the Lord was trying to save me from getting there to that place where I wasn't willing to reconcile. But I totally track with that. And grace is freakish. It just is. It's freakish and it's transformative. Like the day you receive it and you really truly know that, like, man, like I kind of deserve to die for how I lived my life and the things I've done wrong, the things I knew I've done wrong, and the things I failed to do, and the people I failed to love. Like, yeah, I was worthy of condemnation, but Jesus, you sent your son for me, and like he died as me, not just to like cover over my sins, but like to actually pay for them. Like there's no debt anymore,
Mm.
and like to be loved in that type of way makes you want to free other people up to be loved in that same
Yeah.
exact type of way. So yeah, I'm sorry if I like ranted, but
No, you're good.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, forgiveness is heavy, for sure. And I don't think I relate with you on the whole dad part. I think for a long time I didn't forgive my dad for some of the hurt that he'd done in my life, and my dad and I have like grown a lot, like a lot, and so I think like there had to be a time where I think I had forgiven him and I didn't realize it, but I think it was the reconciliation part that I didn't want to walk through yet.
Yeah.
I didn't want to like have to take work to restore the relationship. I didn't want to have to do that. But I think my dad was ready the whole entire time, and and I think there wasn't like a steady moment where I was like, okay, I'm gonna reconcile this right now. Okay, let's start here. It, I think it's just been a long process. Um, and so I think grace, I think of it, that's a lot of what it is to me. It's a one and done thing, but it's a process. It's daily renewed every single day. I mean, his mercies are new every morning. Like great is his faithfulness, and
Mhm.
so um, like he will be faithful to show his mercy. Um, and I think like it's a process. I'm reading a book. It's funny. I'm reading a book called Soul Care, but the one chapter is I read today is called Forgiveness. And so there's so many things that kept saying like, oh, don't worry, like you doing this is not going to excuse what they did, or a lot of like prompts. He kept saying that, but then after it was like you were just needing to learn how to forgive. That's what you're doing. Like things about like blessing them with prayers, things about knowing that like forgiveness is a process. It's not like a one thing. It takes time. It takes process, giving yourself grace to like process things. Um, and so like I think that's one way we're living grace out in terms of that what honors God. I think it um thing that I'm learning to do, and forgiveness is one of them. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a process, man. Like it's a total process, and I'm a sequence guy. I'm not a process person. I like things to be in order, and I like things to go a certain way. And processing is not that way at all. And I think God is so great in terms of like I want to teach you how to better process, and knowing that like it takes time. And I'm the type of person just how I grew up, and just based on my personality, that I like things to have an end result product, and I like the things to come quickly and to be done. And okay, here's the sequence of events, and this is how it's gonna happen, and this is how it should happen.
Mhm.
And God's been like destroying my view of perfection. And so one of that is learning to process, and things take time. I'm a fast paced person. I'm very timely oriented,
Mhm.
and this is one circumstance in my life where God's transforming that. So,
Man, I can relate to that like crazy. I feel like there have been so many times with so many things where I've had that mindset where I'm just like one and done type of thing.
mm,
Where I mean, yeah, in the context of forgiveness, yeah, that being a thing where I've come to points where I've been like, all right, I forgive that person, and then next day I'm like really pissed off about it. Um, and there's a part of me that's just like, wait, but I forgave them.
mm,
But it's like, no, you wanted the quick fix. Like
yeah,
in reality, it was just more so like I wanted to just disregard what had happened than actually walk through that
mm,
process. Like having the daily decision.
yeah,
Like regardless of how I feel, like I'm gonna release them. And I'm glad you brought that up in the book as far as like forgiveness is not. How do you word it? Like it's
it's not. I mean, it's not. It's a process. Like things take time. That's kind of what if I
yeah.
remember
Well, I mean,
correctly.
as far as like it's not justifying their
Oh
behavior.
yeah, it's not saying like what you did is like right, but it's allowing you to forgive them.
Yeah, and I mean, like
Mhm.
it's something that I think we don't usually consider, but like I mean, by its very nature, if you're forgiving somebody, like you are acknowledging that you have been hurt. Like
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah,
like to forgive someone, like I don't know, like that's part of what it is. So
Mm-hmm.
like I think like the opposite. Yeah, I don't know. For us to even think like forgiveness is saying that what someone did was no big deal, almost like goes against what forgiveness is.
Yeah.
right.
But
I mean, yeah, if you think about how much it took for us to be forgiven, like the cross, like it it showed for one like how grotesque sin was because of how badly Jesus had to suffer. But at the same time, it does reveal our value to him and in him that he would send his son to like take the sin that was on us and that defined us basically off of us so that the identity that he created us in could be restored onto us.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, like the cross wasn't a slap on the wrist. Like we at Throne were kind of going through Bible study, and there was a part of Jesus suffering on the cross where he actually took the sour nard. And he drank one, but he refused the other. And like when we piece that apart, the one that they offered him beforehand was meant to numb the pain that he was suffering through. So he refused that one so that he could fully take the full extent of the suffering. And the reason he accepted the other one was because it actually kept him alive longer to fully endure the pain. And that's why he accepted the second one and not the first. And like that blew our minds. Like he didn't do it cheap. He didn't try to cut corners. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like our sin is a big deal to the Heavenly Father. That's why the cross was so grotesque. But the beauty that it produces, and knowing that that's finally done with. And when he looks at us, he sees us as like holy, spotless, blameless in his sight, like without blemish, without like an above reproach. Like that's something that we receive. Like that's is nuts. And it's like even when my mind says that I don't feel like I'm any of those things, the cross still says otherwise. And it's like, well, you're God, I'm not.
Hmm.
So I would do well to believe you when you say that you love me the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, forgiveness is messy, but when it's done, it's beautiful and like it produces something so great in the person who is the offender and also in the victim.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Like there's redemption for both sides. And that's kind of like what I pray for. And I hope I don't say that in a way that's like undermines like the pain that we go through. But like I want to say that there is a hope beyond it, and it doesn't have to define us. Like you're not what happened to you
Yeah,
or what someone has done to you. Like in the eyes of God, we're so much more than that. And the healing is found. We begin to believe that instead of believing the lie.
for sure.
Yeah. Caleb, I like you, man.
That wasn't my goal. Maybe
So,
not the approval of men, but the approval of God in some Ephesians passage.
so Calvin, sorry to shift gears, but while we've been recording, I actually did have someone submit a question. Um,
Really?
yeah, they recorded audio and sent it, so I just want to play it. Hopefully, you'll
Yeah.
be able to hear it fine. And then, yeah, so this is a question submitted. There are actually two audio files, so I'll play the two of them. Oh, shoot. Give me a second. Mm, all right. 1 second, Cal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is fun.
Technology is
Yeah.
I don't know.
slow.
Okay.
No idea what to expect.
Guess it's more directed. Hey guys, so I have a question, and I guess it's more directed toward Calvin, but I was just wondering if you could answer or talk a little bit about the fact that you're moving to Pennsylvania. Hey guys, so I have a question. I guess it's more directed toward you, Calvin. Could you talk a little bit about the fact that you're moving to Williamsport, Pennsylvania?
You know what? I really I knew something like this was gonna happen, man.
Ooh, that's why I'm
In
here.
my heart of hearts, I'm like, dude, someone is gonna troll me today. I felt it. This is the moment we started.
I mean, just so you
All
brought up
right,
that,
all
like,
right.
yeah, I mean, you haven't met Caleb in person, and you're like, I like you, dude. I was just like, it seemed like the right timing, you know? So
Yeah, it seemed appropriate. So
you
I
could hang
guess
out with
to
Caleb every
answer
day
that,
if you moved.
that's fair. Caleb looks like the type of guy who's really into really good coffee. Would I be
Oh,
wrong?
oh, I love. Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
There we go. See, already. Yeah, we definitely bro down. Um I there have been rumors going around that I am moving to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and I want to just kind of to settle that. Um, I have I have not considered moving to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, but I have a lot of friends and family in Wilpo that I like truly care very deeply for and would love to
Mm.
see more often than I do. And I will be coming there to visit Wilpo. And I told Josh, like, I'll probably stay like a week to make sure I have enough time to meet everyone and like grab coffee and go to all the cool spots that we went to before. But as far as like a life move, I don't think that's something that the Lord has for me. I'm pretty rooted here in Michigan. Um, yeah, like by the grace of God, I am one of two worship pastors at my home church, and I lead a worship team. And I don't want to just walk away from that or the things that God's put here for me as far as our Tuesday night Bible study and things. So those things have been really fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Lord hits me in a dream and is like, Calvin, I need you to move to Williamsport, Pennsylvania and preach the gospel. At that point, I'll probably pull a Gideon like, all right, Lord, I don't know if this is really you. So I'm going to put a towel out my front yard and, do the whole wager thing to make sure it's really him and not me just being emotional and wanting to go because Michigan's fun, but Pennsylvania's pretty cool, you know?
We have
So,
hills,
yeah.
and
Oh, it's hilly
we
awesome.
have better coffee. We have Caleb's here.
You have Caleb. You guys have Kaylin, Eleanor. We have Evelyn, Josh, Kendra. I mean, like, really, it's all I need. But
Or-
anything else is a plus. And the fact you guys have Alabaster, I mean, like,
Oh,
let's be serious.
we have. It's really kind of a Grace Buffet out here. There's a restaurant called Grace Buffet. So I mean,
My Lord.
if that be any indication of where you should be.
I mean, I'm gonna say the super Christian thing, man. You guys ready?
I don't know if I'm
Let
ready.
me pray on it. Let me pray on it.
That's fair.
I'm sorry if that answer's not satisfying, but it's the only one I have.
You're good. I mean, that was a genuinely, a submitted question. So I wanted to run that by you. I will just say, you don't need to justify your decision to stay in Michigan or like give us reasons why you're not gonna move out here. The fact that you did feel the need, though, makes me wonder if there's some conflict in your head. That's really poor reasoning on my part.
wow.
But just trying to.
I love you for it, though.
But yeah, you're welcome here anytime, though, man. As a visitor, as a resident, but as a visitor, we'll take it. And yeah,
One day at a time, man.
Most of the pressure is in jest, although we would be totally happy with you here.
I'm honored, man. I really am. I'm super honored. This is great.
Yeah. So, Caleb, any final closing thoughts? Anything that you want to add, or that you're, that's on your heart?
I mean, this has been very cool. I mean, I've never been on a podcast, and the ironic part is I'm actually not like a podcast type person. Generally like video and stuff, and so I was like, man, just to hear the voices like really trains your mind to like really listen for content. And I think just I really want my words to mean something. So thanks for like seeing my words as something to be needed, and something to be wanted. And so there's thanks for like valuing my words, and because it's by God's grace that I'm able to speak, and it's just been really eye-opening to kind of hear other people's thoughts. I'm generally the one to talk a lot, and so like it's allowing myself to listen to how you guys interact, and then like I get to be a part of this. And so that was more like not a farewell, that was my thanks.
Right on.
So yeah,
I appreciate you being willing to talk, man, and just for sharing life with us. So appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for taking such good care of Josh.
It's a work in progress, but you know what? It's more like I'm the work in progress, so I take that back.
Yeah, we're all works in progress. I will say,
Yeah.
man, like it's really cool because like when we first met, Caleb, like I think it was maybe the second time that we talked. You asked about like meeting up regularly,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, like I feel like hearing your heart and like being able to just like talk about things that like you're going through
Mm.
is as much of like an encouragement and you know, I mean, like good challenge in my walk with God
Mm.
as anything, you know. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's really cool just like when we do life together and just like talk about things from both sides, like that's mutually edifying.
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the goosey's in the arms. Whew.
The goosies in the arms.
The goosey. This is goosey awesome.
Calvin, love you, man. Thanks
Love you too.
taking the time, and yeah, thanks for moving to Williamsport. We'll
In case you didn't know, he was here with us the whole time. He's actually not in Michigan. He's actually here. But you didn't know that. You didn't see it.
Hey man, if I get some time, maybe before J Fest. Oh, is that Krispy Kreme, bro?
yeah, they're here
You
right
guys are
now.
racing?
I mean, they won't be here
Uh.
if you take too long, but
The way Caleb's looking at him, I don't think I have much of a chance.
yeah, that's fair.
That's yeah. Oh man, it's Krispy Kreme and they're fundraising Krispy Kreme.
Yeah, I'm just
What do you-
saying, like
what do you-
more motivation to be here.
Oh.
Are you guys raising funds for me to get there? Is that what that is?
It started GoFundMe to move Calvin to Williamsport.
Please, Lord. Dude, I'm so grateful to be a part of this thing. And Caleb, man, like we're bros now, you know? That's kind of how this thing works. So at any point where like you need prayer, you need to talk, like Josh has my phone number, like I'm here, and vice versa. Like if I need prayer or anything like that, dude, like I'll definitely be looking to reach out to you too, and we can like support each other through what God's doing. But I'm glad we're on the same team, man.
Dude, it's awesome. Pretty great.
Good.
So last thing before we sign off, Caleb, you did mention that you have a blog.
I do.
So plug that thing.
Really?
Where can people go check that out?
Yeah, so I'm not the most techie person, but I share it on my Facebook. There's 2 blogs on it right now, and it's called I Am Not King. And it's just a website that I created. But I don't even remember I think it's I Am Not King.
We'll post the link.
Yes, I'm really not that great at
description.
marketing myself, but it's called I Am Not King, and yeah, it's been really cool to see kind of God kind of mold my writing and walk me through that. So, yeah,
Cool deal. All right, man. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it.
yeah.